In this video, I will explain you step by step how you can use such a simple workflow to automatically back up all your workflows to a private GitHub repository. And the cool thing is that you don't have to back up all your workflows because, at least in my case, I have also a lot of test workflows and I don't want to push them just to my GitHub repository because they are kind of useless and only used for testing. And instead of adding these noisy data, I will also show you a way how you can filter your workflows based on tags and then only push workflows that are important for you. But before we start, it's important to mention that there are first of all requirements, and after that we can follow these steps to set up the workflow. And of course, you need a GitHub account and also running n8n instance and the workflow itself. And then we can start with the first step, and I already did that. So I took this workflow from my main instance and imported it to my test instance. And as you can see, I also don't have the credentials yet. So I don't have the credential for being able to communicate with GitHub, but also not with the n8n API. And these two credentials are important. Otherwise, the workflow won't work, but I will also show you how to create them step by step. But before we do that, we have to create a private repository, which is done in GitHub. And it's really easy. So just a few clicks, but don't worry, I will also show you that. And at the end of the video, we will take a workflow, execute it manually, then we can also check if it worked. And lastly, I will show you how to schedule it in case you want to back up your workflows on your daily schedule, every hour, or whatever you prefer. So we can continue then with the second step. And for that, you can simply go to your GitHub profile. And don't worry, it's also free, so you don't have to pay for it. And after that, you can go to repositories. And from here, click on new. And then you can set a name. So in this case, I would just use test demo. And then you can also add here a description. It will also git ignore, but in this case, it's not required. The only thing you have to configure is if you want to make it public or not. So in case you want that everyone else can also access the workflows, then you can leave it as public. But if it's not public, then you can simply set it here to private, which means only you can see it. And in case you want to add a colleague, then you can also add them. And then you are the only persons that have access to this private repository. So in this case, I will set it to private and then click on create. And with that, we already covered the second step. So next we need to create the credentials. And for the n8n API credential, you can simply go to settings and then under n8n API, create a new API key. Let's say test demo, so that it also matches. Of course, you can also change it in case you want to set here an expiration date. Then you can do that as well. But for this tutorial, I would just leave it as 30 days and then click on save. And now it's really important to copy this value because you won't be able to see it again. It's not super critical because you can simply create a new API key, but nevertheless, it makes sense to copy it immediately and then also create the credential afterwards. So I already copied that and then I can click on done, go back to the settings and then to the workflow. And here, as you can see, nothing is selected here. You can simply create a new credential, add here the API key. And you also need to set the base URL, and you can also see how it should look like. So in this case, I can simply copy the URL from here, paste it there, and then also at the endpoint, which is API/v1. And once this is done, then you can click on save. And with that, the first credential is already created. And then we need the credential for the GitHub node. And for that, I would recommend to go with the OAuth2 option. So that means we need the client ID and also client secret. And for that, we need to go back to GitHub and create first an application. So it's kind of really similar to what you already do when you want to connect, let's say, Google Sheets. Then you have also configured a Google Cloud project and configured the consent screen. And you can find it under your profile. And then it is under settings, which is here. And then scroll to the bottom where you have developer settings and then the second link. So OAuth apps, click on it, click on new app. Then you can also add here value, let's say test demo. Then we need to add here to the authorization callback URL, the redirect URL. So you can simply copy it, go back and paste it here. In case you want to add a description, then you can also do that. And for the homepage URL, you can simply copy and paste the URL to your n8n instance. And once you have done that, then you can click on register application, and then you will receive the client ID, which you can just copy and then paste it here. And after that, you have to create a client secret. So this button here, is responsible for that. So simply click on it, and then it will create a new secret. So you can also copy that, go back to n8n, paste it here. And after that, click on save. And now we have to connect it. So click on connect, then click on authorize, which is here. And once you have done this, then the credential part is done. So we already covered the first 4 steps. For tagging a workflow, that's actually really easy. The only thing you have to do is simply add here a tag. And as you can see, I have already a tag test, but let's say you have a specific system or a workflow that you don't want to lose, then you can just enter here something new. Let's say test 1, and then click on enter, and then you have a second tag. So now you know how to create a tag, but before we can continue, we also need to update the GitHub nodes. And for that, you need to select the correct repository. So we created the test demo. So I will select this one. And of course, we have to do the same for the other 2 nodes. So the update file and also upload file node. So again, we need to update here the repository and select also test demo. And also for the last node. And the last change we have to do is here in the retrieve workflows node, because we need to set here the correct tag. And instead AI SEO system, I created some test tags. So in case you want to back up all your workflows, then just remove here the filter. If you want to back up workflows based on the tags, then you can add here the tags followed by a comma in case you want to include multiple tags. But I will leave it as test. And if we execute it now, then it should upload in the first run the file to the test demo repository. And it did that, so we can also check that. Let me open GitHub and then refresh. And as you can see, both workflows are now in my GitHub repository. And if I execute it again, then it should not upload them again because they already exist. And instead, these files will be updated. So let me execute it again. And this part worked also. So that means depending on if the file exists, then it will update it. And if the file does not exist, then it will upload it to the repository. And the last thing we need to cover is how to schedule it, because you don't want to execute it manually. And for that, it's really easy. Just go to the schedule trigger, open it, and let's say you want to execute it on the daily basis, and you can simply configure it here. So you could leave it as it is, or you can also say, I want to do the backup every hour, once a week, once a month, or whatever you prefer here. And with that, we are already at the end of this video. You can find this workflow inside my community under n8n basics. And in case you have any questions, feel free to ask me. And with that, we will see each other in the next video.